Hello, excuse my appearance. I was doing yard work all day. Judge Napolitano has sources, for example, that are involved with preventing people free speech. Their uses of their knowledge of good and evil, for example, not to quote the Bible, but quoting it to show, for example, per science has nothing to do with the Bible. Because before that part in the Old Testament, with the tree of life and the tree of good and evil, for example, because also Judge Napolitano is judging freedom, he's Catholic. I've had to ask him through posts and comments. See, the FBI has been changing social media digital evidences with a proven principal child offender. And since that was proven, they had rules forcing that first. Also with retired police chiefs and foreign and domestic medical families. Also tactically delusions wrought. All kinds of natures of organized crime with people concentrated at mental health locations with hospitals know. Through time, they've been planting evidences with a whole bunch of names on my street from other areas. And I found this out through you guys when you're silent. Till you guys keep speaking, that communicates too. Because you guys are obligated, because I was attached by WFSB to fake conversations with themselves and with others about the World Trade Center attack too. They're increasingly involved with people next to them too, and the difference of their guilt. That because there's worse. Forgiveness is because there's a breaching method involved with all the evil here. Because there's a pure evil that every person and the people stack. The suburbs were designed before America's founders were born. There are homes that are still standing, and those had slavery entrenched northern colonies and southern colonies. So, in other words, it was way more above than a tea tax, ticking people off that made America come together. James Madison, the founders behind him and his plan, they went and got George Washington to agree to help to use that plan. We were supposed to be honest about his extortion, though, but that plan too, and that was to counter extort and force the other founders. Everyone had to hide their actual motivations for it. Everyone had to hide the roles with it because the laws had already been sustained even before other countries were born too. In other words, and their companies, etc. Value nature systems as economies and things, tactical ulterior from the one that shows us. In other words, every identity that is real or made up has relativity to positive and negative simultaneously, as identities do, as values do. Ugh. Because and there was a further identity of hyper simultaneous. Again, we have the same color eyes, different color eyes at the same time, being projected to us as this which is true always. That distinct identity of simultaneous nature that has us a distinct species. Other species' bodies, they have two eyes. They have quality aspects in nature. People even have them as pets. Distinct, non-distinct, simultaneous per what is further hyper simultaneous. This is also order. See, people make examples of order, especially when they're setting them up. New Britain Superior Court has rape threats and other passion crimes with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and various Harper courts were planting evidences with deans of campuses, intercities, with the names next to them, regardless of their intelligence with all these countries in the news, because those countries and their family members had time collusions with them. There's a hyper-forensic trail, too, where and how our founders, clearer than day, communicated for us to understand about why no one had free speech, because everyone's speech was measured and maintained through their own, because everyone's own was already sustained roles with natures of industries, natures of logic, agenda, nature that would that will cause to more and more negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. Acts like predicate acts, natures like criminal insidiousness natures. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I recorded the type of recorded lawyers themselves, all sides of criminal and civil cases in the courts. They could be, were, and are, and with news at the same time, putting the same sequence shifts. Quality aspects of fact treatment nature to keep a nature of criminal insidiousness / hypercriminal insidiousness relative to where and to how there are subject treatments pretended only that way because of politics, for example. In other words, at locations A through Z, everywhere the human species body is. This has not been addressed. They have changed they have self-valued roles with our founders' communications to us being and having been changed, and using what they said, leaving out what they communicated, declassified afterwards, about James Madison's plan, for example. In other words, even if that was made up, because I don't have my book anymore. And why I don't have it too is also people involved with the World Trade Center attack from Connecticut. Connecticut Interbranch has been refusing to get on paper, and the news has roles with this. I don't know the neighbors of a South Sevilla. In other words, South Sevilla was in my 4th grade class, and there are people with the name Warren. Increasingly, they were recently mayors. They look like good people, but good people stay evil. It's right. That's why I'm on here having to beg Judge Napolitano to get the Connecticut Interbranch on paper in the campuses. I want a response for them. They've been lying to kids and their parents, and then they make themselves out of roles because little tricks you're going to watch. You're going to watch predicate acts with facts methods. They put me to fake conversations with doctors. They're doing this with little kids, with the Leahy family. They have their little pictures of their own daughter involved to obfuscate this. They have fake conversations with me, with doctors, and themselves through the mail too. They pretended with the Leahy family, a whole bunch of men and women, different ages groups in their family, involved increasingly with Hartford Hospital's Institute of Living and names next to them, with criminal enterprises, with predicate acts on my street. When I was a kid and now as an adult, increasingly people with the state judicial branch offices have narratives and natures regarding who played football around each other. They're bringing all sides of criminal and civil cases as collusions with the courts in a whole bunch of different countries at the campuses involved. Central Connecticut State University has roles with people with the name Kerr, and I forgot the other guy's name, at the corner of Southstein Highway and Two Route Highway and Town Line Drive. Also with people with the name DeMorrow. There are people with the name DeMorrow and Colo who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There are people with the name Napolitano involved with them lying about themselves and others. Sometimes it was influenced by the people like their educators associated with, sometimes their family members, and sometimes themselves. In other words, and the difference of that is used too. There are increasingly they have whiting forensics involved with these people, and involved with child offenders that were first force leaders of the kids. They are not legitimately with the military. They're not legitimately. It's only that I influenced them to time that communications with you. These are people that spied on me when I was in 1st grade. Before that age campus and names next to it, they locked them into the bullshit. Excuse my language. They're putting completely right through administrations. There are also all kinds of delusions in the way of our free speech. So offensively, through administrations, no one's letting me get help, including the mental people. Their tactical delusions are raw. You go talk to them, they'll change what you say. Then they cover it up by faking conversations with you with more and more people. Increasingly, people on at corners of streets on Church Street in Old Weathersfield are involved with WTNH, and along Route 175 and Route 13. In other words, WTNH has people tied to a Violet families and their roles with UConn and with Hartford Hospital. UConn has roles with Hartford Hospital with people putting fake uses of drugs on other people, putting to fake locations with child sex offenders. They have roles with probate courts families, with the same house with the wire crimes, with the police and courts, forging names, switching names, putting fake things in their databases, leading up to the World Trade Center from Connecticut intercities, and then interstates. Because these are the same names on all the state judicial branch offices and all of the state corrections offices. Increasingly, people tied to a Ray Clow, like a Luigi Guerrero and a John Maiano, and people with the name Zeno are involved with the news media and foreign and domestic, leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and since. Increasingly, the people at locations next to Fox Connecticut News, and the difference between them as the guilt with that or Fox Connecticut News has roles with the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants and their family members, increasingly involved with child defenders, leaders of kids, including with a church near there. And it's nothing personal against the church. Even when it's only about the acts, only the predicate acts I'm worried about here. I'm not, in other words, you're going to get them on paper, one name in sequence. And we're going to examine what they're doing with the spots next to Fox Connecticut News, next to WFSB, and next to WTNH, which is the FBI. The FBI has further corruption and roles with upskirt pictures and people with the campuses with Sandy Hook involved. These are also medical people and rackets associated with abuses of all ages of fact-cheating nature. These are also names and roles with the veterans buildings. See how they are built, just like, for example, the suburbs have quality aspects in nature that was forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded. But with slavery entrenched northern colonies, southern colonies, therefore against everyone. When you examine those laws, too, rather than examine that in the fact-cheating nature, in the breaching method we were supposed to blame for it, you guys have other things others are self-blame. Our founders had slavery. They had to hide the roles countering it. Everything was fake. We know that it's fake. You guys want to have debate about things that are debatable, or use the truth to keep it for lies. The screen really keeps that quality of fact-cheating nature incapable of the answers. You have Russians, Ukraine, China. You guys are all here together. Tactical ulterior from how our founders communicated for us. We're not supposed to put words in our founders' mouths. We're not supposed to leave those words forced by the hyper-criminal foreign influence. There's a difference. We're supposed to be grouped, a species body, and with the finite parts are grouped with representation. But now it has been through systems tactical ulterior, from how nature communicates with us in revelations using natural, how we are a species volume of individual body, individual species body of individual bodies. All group differences are being generated as relativity to that identity, that distinct identity of hyper-simultaneous nature. Again, that has us with the same quality aspects of nature as the other species too. Distinctly, but non-distinctly, simultaneously, and how there are all these ways at the same time. We are shown one identity of hyper-simultaneous. The pantheism was more probably demonstrably having been revealed, being led by this. And its identity, to the extent we can discern it of any subject, for example, it comes with its complete identity of relationship to itself. And it comes also with the value of that, 3 ways equally increasing. Just like there are 3 identities of 0 that are observably increasingly valuable, not just in physics, with the numbers. So, in other words, there is a Mike DeMay, and there are people with the name Mendez who are involved with wire crime, mail crimes, with and as police forms next to Fox Connecticut News, and a whole bunch of people tied to them, and neighbors of a Salcerio like a Enzo Fienzo. He has a cousin. I forgot his cousin's name. They sought me out. Also with people involved with the Cove in Weathersfield. And the intelligence community gets people to it gets people that can't afford to go back. They may have to make up and fake details and sequences. These are the people involved with the sequence shipped in the Ninth Circuit Court the day of the World Trade Center attack, which is a court right next to it in Manhattan. Weathersfield police have predicate acts with the name Scalora confessed by them, but they're switching and forging names and committing predicate acts at the same time, so then they pretend it's personal. They're changing what they use right to lie, where they don't have the right to lie. Mass fake transcripts. And the difference of guilt is overt criminal enterprises. The difference of guilt, too. It's differentially sometimes worse, but increasingly collusion with the styles used remotely, criminally foreign influence. Like when you guys make opinions on what you think, which trials are about. In other words, America. In other words, the kids have excuses, but this breaching method showed the identities of law. They need to keep other things others themselves blame, and they need to hide. It shows them they need to hide from what is actually discernible about what the actual value of the past was, what the actual value of the active now grouped realities, where all sides don't know to an extent, but there is an extent of that what is true always. All sides know. So when they speak about negotiations, the standards are influenced by the suburbs were designed tactically denatured to force people to need food resources from other. This had been perfected against countries before their founding, had been sustained. And the Native Americans were the last ones to fall. In other words, them and that coupled with our founders' plan, which was there was no way to unentrench what was entrenched. But so they within at 13 or at key locations, they counter extorted, and they forced people to have to hide from there was that breaching method that was running like an algorithm. Everyone had a database relationship to themselves. The Republic had already been criminally foreign influenced / hyper criminally foreign influenced. It is important to call it that. A number of, for increasingly, but in other words, because too, for blame, even where and how there are needs to blame. Oh, it's this person, oh, it's that person. Oh, of course, they're killing each other now. I saw this coming years ago. I put it down. I told you this. You guys have, in other words, you want to blame names, and then it's but all that does the whole time the quality of fact achieving nature. It's not capable of defending itself and affording discern the value and the revelations. The little kids and the people stacking in New York City with those huge buildings that look just like the ones the veteran buildings are built like. And the veteran and the elderly homes, disgusting. This is the scale and nature of the infrastructure by our means. In other words, we're in a hyper rat trap at countries A through Z, and the cause of it was not A through Z. This is more probable and practical to convict and demonstrably increasingly. Judge Napolitano has a Aaron Mate, who looks just like a Joe DeMoro, who's one of the people recorded involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and people on Valley Crest in Old Weathersfield involved also with military, with medical offenders of kids and doctors that forged names of other doctors too, like a Shamsi Ali, with this involved with the Leahy family and the other people at Hartford Hospital were refusing me. Mental health too. And they say, oh, that's what good. They want to take your drugs. People don't want drugs. People want the mental health because they're refusing to identify themselves. They have Dean Judd of Central Connecticut State University, and they have a Dean Alford involved, like with a Dean Alford confirmed the day after with a Joshua Stryker is one of the ones involved with them. And also there are other girls that recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed he told lies to them with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, but also with other countries and overt criminal enterprises. And his educators putting fake things in databases, which and as roles, time collusions with child sex offenders, including digital, including a Joshua Julian, who's also in roles with the Violet brothers and their mother with the Yukon, with the medical offenders of kids, and planting evidences on my street with people all along Route 175 and state police families, interstates. Their roles with foreign and domestic and France. I mean, the borders, because they have collusions that they run in with the overt criminal enterprises. See the stories about criminal enterprises next to Hartford Hospital. In other words, not by accident. They're running in, even then the people are doing it for them. Then they make sides of issues. And other people who are supposed to be mentally competent, mental experts, they're involved with more natures of organized crime acts than there are streets and houses in the streets in Hartford, Connecticut. Boxings. So there's a Judge Killian, for example, spoke fake things in a record. And about the digital evidence. He has time collusions with digital sex offenders, leaders of kids, a principal child sex offender. He also has delusions and his family members involved with his communications, not just but since before he ran for mayor too. Ugh. In other words, a bunch of probate courts family members are involved with the Cololo family, with a Phil Cololo that a Bob Chase from Whiting Forensics is one of the ones involved with Sandy Hook too, with the serial killer in that body dumping spot with the Cololos too. And they brought up the name Christine. They have been involved, people associated with and as a Bob Chase with Whiting Forensics. They are increasingly involved with a whole bunch of names, increasingly at crime scenes, involved with and as the people tied to them with the same house, a whole bunch of people tied to them that from other areas made it look like they knew that we're a group and we're like, you know, we knew each other too as kids. Like, I don't know what schools. I don't know one school that Rob Rodriguez went to. One time I remember his name when I was in his driveway near the sidewalk, and Joe DeMoro was communicating with him, and right after his brother, John DeMoro, made confessions and confirmations, demonstrations. I have a 5th grade teacher named Mr. Abruzzi, who's increasingly involved with little kids, confessions tied to different body dumping spots. And Central Connecticut State University has some KKK Black themed, Latino themed, and other military themed, who have been planting fake ties and fake natures of ties to me, federal evidences rackets with the Wethersfield police refusing to identify themselves, falsifying police reports, and putting them arrays. They're changing their roles intercities with this, 2 little tricks. So then when they speak about it, they have readings of statutes with lawyers of the FBI and of the Wethersfield police chief retired, Sinchan Tran, that give the benefit of the doubt to themselves at the last second. See, they leave out they leave out what really came first. That's why they say sequence just are mass value. For example, they can't afford to have discern the quality of their readings of statutes and precedents originally instilled. A Trantolo and Trantolo is involved. I barely had any conversation with them at all. They changed what people say into conspiracy theory to keep it off the predicate acts. They have roles with the networks they've been advertising through, also with the names next to them, who are names that have been between campuses involved with predicate acts with fax methods and with identity racketeering, worse than war crimes, which what we're speaking about, black pupils, whites of eyes. This is how the cartoon characters of the cartoon value nature system are all counter-extorted and forced to defend themselves exactly the way. Little rap guy set up for them too, but before the black pupils lost their original mission, because in other words, that's fantasy, but more so reality than the fantasy we have. Like, for example, it's one thing to use your knowledge of it's the F-55 4C3 weapon system, and this is the 534 weapon system. All these countries are here together. They have timed roles. Russians, there's a Russian lady, I don't even know her name. She said she was Russian. I believe she repeated it to me. As one of 3 times I was forced to mental evaluation by at Hartford Hospital. 2 times they fabricated things to get me in there, because the first time I forced people to call the police without telling them why, and they wouldn't do it. So I said, I'm going to get really violent verbally, and I did that, and I forced them to do it. Then they had to hide what I call, because in other words, a whole bunch of people tied to a Kevin Dillon too are increasingly involved with somebody. Bajerio is also one of the ones, with the judges involved, putting fake things in records, and with child offenders of mixed natures and overt criminal enterprises and private ones. And it's not legitimately their roles with acting professors and unmarked police forms. They don't have a legitimate care for that, or you would get on paper one name in sequence, and get them on paper. This is from every year before the World Trade Center attack. The Wethersfield police chief, Cintron, and his family members and people tied to them, leading up to the World Trade Center attack, and since, they were involved with Central Connecticut State University. And years ago with the houses associated with this Phil Cololo and the confessions, and then they're leaving out their roles with a whole bunch of different names. The DeMoros confessed, recorded, demonstrated, confirmed, and the ones with Violet, they have roles with other countries like Korea, with psychiatry, and with people with Pakistan, with psychiatry, people from Italy with psychiatry, with the courts and the prisons. These are the people with the name Cololo and DeMoro. They have people with the military, on and off the corrections offices, on and off the state judicial branch offices, and with people just passing by when they're speaking. They're keeping cover-ups by using little tricks. They record conversations after people already said other conversations. Oh, why don't you say anything? That's relative to phenomena associated, for example, even with little apartments, let alone those big people stacking. You have to let a lot of things slide. And in other words, we're in a trap that we could get right out of by focusing on the predicate acts with facts methods too, recorded whole methods of them, black pupils. Yeah, shouldn't have to beg in comment section too, because for them to get on paper. Connecticut into branch and the New York too, because they have New York names involved with the ones on my street planting evidences and in the World Trade Center context, the same ones long term leading up to the World Trade Center attack too. These are people with shell games, There are a whole bunch of people tied to a former Mayor Gold, and he has a daughter named Debbie Gold and Lee Gold, and that are attached me to fake tie. I don't even know them. And she tried to make fake exception of Debbie Gold. I don't know what they put in the records, but they're building on it. They're building, like when I was in second. I only love my school. There was instances where they do, and other kids. In other words, I even valued the ones where when you walk by, someone will say something. You won't know who they are or where that came from. In other words, because they're not in your class. As people involved increasingly with mayors too. Ugh. There are people involved with mayors with a house next to the Connecticut Department of Education in Old Wethersfield, a former mayor, and has roles with the Saudi attackers, with people named Scalora and DeMauro. There's a John DeMauro involved with Old Wethersfield. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and various natures of judges, family members. There's ones that a Della Fera. I only knew to call him up because he was a stranger to me. And he was recorded. That's why one of the things I couldn't get a response. He was planting evidences with people, with other judges of different courts with the same house /S next to me. Also with the Wethersfield Police Department. There's a David Smith and a Jamie Smith involved with fire departments in the campuses and the town offices of Wethersfield. Also with their mother, with some kid involved with their as a patient, or as even if as some kind of security. He's involved with planting evidences and forging, name crimes and contractual crimes and legal crimes with Hartford Hospital, drugs and medicines crimes, and violence crimes. So that's also there are roles with people with gangs and violence, and then insidious peace, and like behavior racketeering, because they're fishing for means to cover up what was recorded. In other words, these same people that went to schools with me in Wethersfield, and ones that didn't even go to schools with me, that had nothing to do with they're increasingly linked into cities. See, the intelligence community makes confessions that way. Then they're pretending passions and emotions online and telling people, "Oh, take your or you have mental problems," because they run into Hartford Hospital, they run into New Britain hospitals. That's why the different police forms are juxtaposed there. Self-valuing, criminally foreign influence, fake transcripts with quotations, whole fake behavior, racketeering. No, but it's a whole bunch of different natures of organized crime. Whole bunch of people with the name Lombardo. I never had a conversation with Lombardo. Something along Church Street where there used to be a Carvel. And two times I had a cooking class. People that were put in that class are involved with sequential federal evidences crimes, identity theft, fraud, slanders. In other words, fake motivations for it too. There's behavior racketeering. They put me in a fake conversation with a Lombardo woman at Hartford Hospital too, and with one of the ones, I don't even know his name. He worked at Connecticut at the community center. He might be one of the unmarked police forms, but Kevin Dillon non-verbally communicated and confirmed collusion with him years before that too. Has something to do also with people associated with the Domain family and others that associated with Zeno. Mazzucato. Mazzucato family has roles with retired police chiefs and all along Route 175, and people with state police families interstates involved with identity theft frauds with a whole bunch of different countries, including the countries in the news that Judge Napolitano talks with about, ask questions about. So they have predicate acts here together. They have collusions with identity difference rackets. They have delusions too that are evidences. So in other words, we could use this. We don't need to look away. They have rules of predicate acts with facts. WFSB attached me to fake conversations with them. I can't get them on paper. In other words, And they're using mail and wire crime and digital crime methods. So they can't be, they'll just change when they already did change that. That's recorded. I reported it right here. You guys are changing what people say. You're even when, in other words, people want to be heard because we need to be heard because we can't go forward with the proper quality of fact-checking nature to do business properly. That's why we have a whole bunch of criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw businesses that a lot of times owe more than to Americans than they're charging them for. In other words, that's involved with torture, extortion, slavery. The design of the VA, the design of the suburbs, let alone of the cities. Hartford, we were supposed to understand. Notice how the suburban / urban, the homes were all converted to 2-3 family houses. And they're not the same families. This is designed to cause before that. They were designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and nature. Knowing the way that nature communicates with its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that. And for example, where it is hyper additionally, that distinctly, non-distinctly, simultaneous / hyper simultaneously as ground, earth. Its roles with exception nature, the way it teaches positive value nature, progressive acts in nature. You don't bury all the water underground, have the rest all polluted. That's what everyone wants commonly. You don't have debates about value, leaving out how the economics were played many ways more so than by anything by the breaching method that had been entrenched before our founders. That's why, even though Russia was founded before America, that's why the suburbs look the same way in America, Russia, and Ukraine. The same breaching method had it, laws that no one could speak. Anyone was found out having not told on someone who they heard speaking about building outside of internationally monitored conversations. Those same ones associated with slavery, not just the transatlantic slave trade. That's shock and awe. So you guys had other communicated at A through Z, sickly distinctly too. So and measured and maintained. So when someone starts, there's an extent of damage control, everyone starts valuing the difference of it too. Or at least, in other words, all you have to understand is that principle. Our founders did not have free speech. All I have to do is, and because there was a breaching method right there, discernible. That's in other words, as the value of those laws. So we're going to have to not just change the books. We're going to have to show how the books have been self-valued, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw fact-checking nature, quality aspects in nature itself, as criminal insidious says nature. I'm not a lawyer. That we also have to examine their delusions. Natural law teaches about order best. There are 5 orders of truth. In other words, forget it. Truths can be used for lie, for example. Truths can be used to screen lie. Truths can be used to force that quality of fact-checking nature. On a mass scale, people pretend they don't understand others when they're obligated to not change how the person mentioned predicate acts. And we're going to have to deal with that as predicate acts if I can't get a response. I want a response for the confessions of the principal child defender to me. And I want a response where I recorded the principal, the former mayor, the former police chief, Cintron, and 1 year ago with the same house, involved planting evidences on all sides of the kids' houses with medical offenders of kids, including sexual, at the same time, overt criminal enterprises, as one's personally and professionally involved with the judges and prosecutors. There's a Brian Silver who's involved with the Slahy family too, with the Rick Baglione, increasingly involved with confessions about wire crimes and falsified police reports of people at his roles with the intelligence families near me, involved with the Phil Colo too, and the whiting forensics increasingly, with body dumping spots at the same time brought up in the, when I was a kid and now in more. There's a serial killer reported convicted serial killer. That person too is and has been involved with them at and next to Central Connecticut State University. The Gill family recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed also people, different owners and maintenance people and people that and people that rent it and people that work with the intelligence community intercities associated with the department next to Central Connecticut State University on Covington Street has roles with the intelligence families there, and their roles with the intelligence families next to Trinity College. And they've been criminally foreign influence with people from Wethersfield since I was a kid named O'Brien, too, involved. And then they try to do things to make it look like people are mad about this or that because they're hiding the sequence shifts. These are also people that were, I didn't even know them before the World Trade Center attack. I just knew, no, but I know I responded when Rick Faglione before that, years before and like, 94, made confessions. He was the Gill family has been involved with a Rick Faglione and O'Brien and a Cololo with planting evidences with foreign and domestic countries and roles with all those different countries in the news. And so we could use this, we could have used this to prevent wars and to reveal potentials and means out of nowhere for everyone. See, the natures of industries won't bring this. They owe too much. Unless we can't have them as victims unless we have ourselves as victims simultaneously, because that's a more important victim. And we only have, we can't have so much time to deal with this. Little kids can't deal with it. And we're in how that's not true. They could. We're taking away their power. And you're giving them power opposite, because, in other words, you have defenses of identities, of titles. Tactical ulterior from how our founders communicated to address them as value, criminal insidiousness nature. I'm not a lawyer. This is how, in other words, they have been worse than criminally incompetent since founding. Tactically delusions rot. Collusion /S. Then, in other words, then their narrative is, I have to make a living, etc. A through Z came through 6 campuses. We're going to have to address this. It is inseparable from these issues. These are also people on, off, and next to the state capitol involved with the Jewish theme and different natures of Catholicism or Christianity. And the difference, in other words, where and how there's a quality of fact being. The government is not allowed to explain themselves. In other words, these intercities, they're trying to make people. What's the instance? There's no instance. They're refusing to identify themselves because they've been planting evidences intercities with other police departments too, and with the same house. The Cololos and people with the name Cololo and DeMauro and O'Brien have roles with a whole bunch of different police departments on a mass scale, originally and still, and with people on the state corrections offices. And note that name, corrections. And I'm not a journalist, but the journalists have been directed to lie since relative to they're pretending they have legitimate things to defenses of our identity. The campuses, the identities there, they are shared here and there. Sick. That's what, in other words, and they won't follow mandated law. They change and fake and obfuscate what people say when we bring up predicate acts. In other words, so leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and since, Connecticut News and their sources had roles with that. And then they have been using predicate acts since. And then everyone wants to love the news and be able to do business and not be isolated and lied about, have their identity stolen. In other words, and you know, no one's going to have a relationship that's proper when these games going on. And then they pretend it's per those motivations. They can't get on paper. That's why the Wethersfield police switched and forged names with other police departments involved. And that's why they're leaking through me, rather than have you guys understand. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, in a 2006 district court case in New Haven, he non-verbally confirmed roles with the Thaddeus Grabowski and others along along Hangdog Lane, Two Rod Highway. Like, for example, in their conjunctions, like the Berlin Turnpike before the heart of Hartford and Route 3, which is one of the conjunctions to it, is the state judicial branch offices. Increasingly, they have a Mike Roberts, a Robert Rodriguez, and a Ray Colillo, and a Joe DeMoro, and a Daryl Chandler involved with locations in the ground together, intercities, and at town lines, used criminally foreign influence / hyper-criminally foreign influence, as the people also next to the news locations roles, including the businesses in a church next to Fox Connecticut News, etc. And the FBI is next to WTNH. WTNH has neighbors of a Paul Kelly, and as a Paul Kelly. I forgot the name. In other words, I don't know them. But they're involved with planting evidences with the judge's family members and people with the name Delafero and all along Route 175. And with the falsified, planting evidences in news stories. And then that's how they use all natures of investigations. Investigators, they are shown they need to hide how they already used them criminally foreign influence. They're forcing all sides of criminal and civil cases at countries A through Z because they are a certain type of victim / hyper victim that came through abridged campuses, tactically / hyper tactically abridged campuses. I say it like that because it maintains that outcome where it's a whole bunch of hyper additional motivations, natures, needs, interests from the one controlling them all. Like, in other words, nature itself shows us how to answer our questions and reveal means out of nowhere. Evolution's fruits, gifts, and means out of nowhere. Understand why and how we hunger was employed by a breaching method that tactically denatured the suburbs. Because if anyone wants to debate that the suburbs are tactically denatured by criminally foreign influence breaching method, needing that, let alone the cities, they're going to have inherent to, active to, and progressive increasingly to their logic in nature, demonstrations not just of the same thing, but of their fact-shaping nature, quality aspects in nature reliant upon A, therefore B, like evidences treatments, what they call research or agreed understanding, as one of those ones that we all know, but it's not real. But we don't understand how it gets there. See, right now, people are killing each other. The experts are only capable of names calling. Cutting people up. With all these countries' names have roles here, collusions with this. Everyone has predicate acts against us, clearer than day. All we have to do is address them calmly. So you have people with weapons and threats to hurt me, various ways, credible, with their doctors too, and their roles with houses and planting evidence on all sides of my house, including my algebra teacher, Miss Riley, years ago. She can't afford to discern how the nature of English is a subject here, and how criminal insidiousness is a subject here. And she offensively told me, she was communicating to me that she was a criminal insidiousness nature and that she was going to pretend other and use her Jewish background. Also, as people other with the name Casper, I don't know, I believe they're Jewish, and Debbie Gold, increasingly involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, putting fake things in databases with others next to the state capitol and at the state capitol involved, like the name, like Mark Violet. Mark Violet, Ray Colell said that there's a Nick LaPere and he has the family members with them involved with the intelligence community too, and with there's Joshua Schumack. He's one of the ones on Facebook with the pages with the principal child. Joshua Julian was on the Facebook page of the principal child, upskirt nature, involved with some KKK, black themed and Latino themed. People I never even had classes with, didn't even go to my schools. That are increasingly stacking on the live progressions of my grammar school databases with this Gold family, and people pretending to be perceived prejudice as Jewish people. And I only know a Paul Zano regarding federal evidences crimes that were Jew themed. And I did not respond to his confessions to me with this. Pretend otherwise. He's involved with sequence shifts too. Ugh. And his educators are. Like a John Mayano was involved with this too. And with increasingly with people involved with the family members of probate judges, involved with interbranch intelligence, little fakes on a mass scale, as the ones involved with the corrections and the prisons too. Sandy Hook Prison has roles with them with state police and other police forms, intercities, and along the Southstein Highway, where there was an Omni place. There are reports there's something to do with Joe DeMora with that too. And so in other words, there's more than one Joe DeMora too. And these are people involved through time making confessions, confirmations. In other words, kids, when I was in second grade, I believe, or third grade, they were influenced to make confessions to me about right when I went by. So it was not even a conversation with someone I knew about their roles with Central Connecticut State University in New Britain. That's also with Justin Klavinskis. I never had a conversation. I don't know his brother. And this person, I was just in his presence. I never really had a conversation with him verbally. He made confessions about his roles with the KKK and the time uses of it and his roles with my neighbors, with sequence shifts, still with that. The use of a car in their driveway when they made their confession about roles criminally foreign influence with differences and laws, names. And like an O'Brien family did that. And had something to do with their roles at the corners of the streets, at the schools, and at the grammar school I went to, where I caught them with the principal child abuser. They have more with the security families of the schools too. It is not by accident that in other words, there's all these shootings centered at the school, because they're confessing, they're calling attacks on themselves. I'm not saying that they're trying to get people to shoot themselves, but they're trying to get people. No, they're lying about their motivations of it too. In other words, they won't respond to me too because they already painted themselves in corners. These are the same ones involved intercities and interstates with World Trade Center predicate acts, with names at the court next to the World Trade Center, with a name like Claudia Scalora. She was one of the ones the night before at one of the spot like outside my hotel room. Not my hotel of the door, the whole building, not my actual room, because I was in the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center right before the attack, and then I learned about the attack when I got home, and I had been right there next to it, and I had learned more because before the World Trade Center attack too, I didn't know his name yet, but former director of the FBI Robert Luskin and his co-defendants and their family members and their lawyer and names next to where his lawyer's office was. There are proofs that it's, I don't know if it's still there, not far from the Capitol. And there's East Hartford locations. There, in other words, we don't have security at countries A through Z because we don't have, no one will follow mandated law, and they have all kinds of natures of organized crime. And they're used for the organized crime methods. Predicate acts with facts methods, the only counters to crime are crime natures. Then they want to make it like a side thing, but they can't afford discerned the value of unabridged Constitution. They can't afford discerned the value of Marbury versus Madison with James Madison's communications and founding plan understood at the same time. Prepare the mind. So all these countries, and there's also a Dr. Shub of modern languages, who's one of the ones on off Kitts Lane in Newington, and where it runs into Two-Rod Highway. It has something to do with people who have been planting with a whole bunch of probate court judges, family members with that area. Intercampuses, identity theft, fraud, slander, fake exceptions of people knowing each other, and completely faked. And too, like a Joshua Julian, I never had anything to do with him. Something with people all along Main Street in Old Weathersfield, and then 175 all the way to Central Connecticut State University. Per them, too, where people communicate other than what they say. And that's relative because they won't get on paper into branch. So they're confessing when they're pretending other. And when people are extorting you, that's what they do. You have to record them doing both. But we have to use the hyper evidential, the hyper recorded. Because all sides in criminal and civil cases, the formal law names, they still have collusion originally and still. That's why I can't afford to have that, how they have that. That's value to everyone. To discern how witch trials, no matter if they're made up by who made them, they're about all sides of cases. And everyone affected by those crazy breaching methods, slavery, facsimile, torture, extortion, slavery method, manifest as value laws, as an identity of value / value progression. Impositions to the natural law per nature. Its means to answer our questions. So there are wire crime acts and methods and digital crime acts and methods with Weathersfield police forging and switching names, playing coward games. If they have made a mistake, to say sorry, it'll be fine. But we're not wasting more time. It's not going to be. Get them on paper. I want a response now. 3 times. Hartford Hospital recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they have people involved with this Dillon family that were planting evidences before I raised my voice and forced people to call the police too. And then 2 times after that, they made it 2 different times. That was only for 3. 2 times they made me go in there for a month, and they lied to my family about what happened because there was no problem between me and my family, and they made it look like there was. Because the first time I tricked them by making people call the police without telling them why. Then they put me in fake conversations with themselves, intercities, A whole bunch of police departments and police forms involved at the same time with the judges, the courts, the judicial branch offices, Facebook, the difference between Facebook, the FBI involved. Get them on paper, one name in sequence. You guys never brought this up, not me. You guys did this before the World Trade Center attack. I asked for people to help me because Eric Burgess asked me to help him. I found out the FBI director in courts and their intimate ties are involved with the deans of the campuses, their family members, everyone forcing people to identify that fraud slanders, little fakes. Then they lie about what they think when people respond to it. In other words, they're putting fake things in databases on a mass scale between campuses through time. Increasingly, Central Connecticut State University has rules intercities with placements at campuses, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusion as well. So we need to have everyone re-educated. So we have to get them on paper, one name in sequence. And I want a response for the rest of the things that could confess recorded by tied to a Dean Emmett too. A superintendent Emmett has more people with the probate courts and with families involved with and the same houses near me involved with overt criminal enterprises and drugs and medicines crimes with the kids and sexual and medical, all kinds of little rat trap things, not what they're pretending. They're not, in other words, get them on paper, one name in sequence. Let's go. Come on. Let's go.